NutriCast.
Because they said, well, it's going to cost $2 million for a new exhibit to get people in. I said, we can't afford $2 million. What do we have already that we could turn around a little bit? And they thought, and they said, well, we have poop, and all the animals poop. Well, let's do a display called Scoop on Poop. So for a summer, we had Scoop on Poop, where the little kids could come in and say, oh, there's the elephant poop. They'd go tell their friends. We'd get even more kids coming through the door. But what if we sell their poop for $20 a gallon and people can put it on their plants and stuff? We made $20,000 just on that little venture.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Think Business with Tyler. Today's guest is Terry Rich. And let me tell you, his story is anything but typical. How many people do you know who've run a zoo, uncovered a multi-state lottery fraud, and helped turn a government-run lottery into a $100 million powerhouse? Terry's done all that, and he built successful businesses along the way. But what I really love about this conversation is how relevant it is for business owners like you. From recovering a failing organization to leading teams through ethical challenges, Terry brings powerful lessons on leadership, calculated risk-taking, and building a culture where innovation and integrity thrive. And yeah, there's a wild story about a lottery ticket, millions of dollars, and the kind of fraud you'd think only happens in the movies. Spoiler, it was real. Stick around. You're going to walk away from this episode with a fresh perspective on risk, resilience, and how to build a business that actually lasts. Let's get going. Hey, Terry, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How's it going today?
Things are going great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm really excited to talk with you. You've got some fun, educational, entertaining stories that I just can't wait to get into. But before, if that isn't a teaser enough, before I get into that, I want to learn about you. What do you do professionally?
I am a professional speaker, go around the globe talking about internal fraud and also creating new ideas. Of course, with grandkids, now that I'm retired, but I just try to have a lot of fun and experience new things in life, which is so important every day.
Yeah. I chuckle when you say, now that I'm retired. That was right after you said, I'm going around the world doing speaking engagements.
Well, I'll tell you why at the end. It's one of the greatest gigs in the world. And I'll also try to give you a new $1 million idea.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'll try to get to the end as fast as I can. But before that, I'd also love to know, and you kind of shared it, but what about you personally? Do you have any personal interests or anything that really grips you, maybe people don't know about you?
I really have enjoyed bike riding. One of the big things people find when they're an entrepreneur or you've been in a company that really is moving and shaking hard is I never figured out how to relax. So I do bike riding now, and I found that's really a fun way to clear my mind, to have fun, and also keep me healthy.
Wow. Now, are we talking an electric bike or are we talking a regular bike?
No, a regular bike, 1,000 to 2,000 miles a year is about what we do. And
wow,
it's really fun.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So confession. So I got into mountain biking, and this is a few years back, and I started using one of these just regular bikes, and I realized how hard it was. So I started looking into these electric bikes, and I got one, and it's made a world of difference. I still, you still can pedal them, but when you start to get one up these, and my friends always make fun of me, but whenever you get up one of these hills, I'm just on my little electric bike, just shooting up the hill, and they're struggling a lot. It makes me laugh. I don't think they think it's funny.
Well, it keeps so you want to continue doing. That's the big thing, is what your personal goals are rather than what everybody else is telling you should be able to do.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
What your personal goals are rather than what everybody else is telling you should be able to do.
So true. Okay, so you've got some great stories. I mean, you've done a zoo turnaround. It was a $600,000 debt, a lottery fraud case, which is just it's going to be a fascinating discussion. But I'm curious about your roots. What pushed you to become the kind of leader who takes on seemingly impossible type tasks?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and I always say if you can hire a farm kid, you do it, because you have to be an entrepreneur. If the tractor breaks and the shop is 20 miles away, you've got to figure out how to fix it. But I came out, and I thought I was going to farm all my life, but I went to college and I was a math major, if you can believe it. So that was going well for a couple of years. And then I just got bored, and someone said, go over here and talk and make a living. So I got into radio and television. So all my buddies got into broadcast TV, and I had somebody come in and said they needed some help with this thing called cable television. So I raised my hand. I think they paid me $500 a month, but they gave me these things called stock options. And it was so fun because everything we touched seemed to turn to gold. I got to work with the Ted Turners of the world, very entrepreneurial, and HBO, and help start MTV. But I learned very quickly that once in a while you have a failure. And I always say failure is the first step to success. Mine was, I was on TV and I looked down at 5 o'clock. I didn't have the 5 o'clock shadow. So I decided to write to Gillette and tell them how much I love their Track 2 razor, knowing that in 2 weeks I'd get a call and I'd go to New York and be on TV. Well, 2 weeks to the day, I got the letter. But during that time, I started dreaming about, man, this is something I really want to try to do, be on national television. Well, here's what the letter said. Dear Mr. Rich, expressing your complete satisfaction with your Track 2 razor, you wrote the wrong company. Here's Schick, or here's Gillette. Here's the place you need to write. So I failed, but I got the incentive to move further and further ahead. And with all these things happening with when I was doing cable television and starting all these new companies, I got a call and the guy said, hey, would you be interested in helping us with our little centennial, giving back to my home community of 50 people? And so I helped him do a promotion, and we landed on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Even though I failed with writing the wrong company, I also failed when I wrote about 44 letters to just any newspaper or TV station I could get on to say, hey, we're having a centennial. We want to adopt a celebrity. And only one response out of the 43. If I had not tried 44 times, I wouldn't have had this happen and be with you today, because I got a call from UPI. I didn't know what UPI was in those days, but they said, hey, we're going to put this on the national wire. And lo and behold, I get a call from The Tonight Show. Said, hey, we want to have you come out, be on TV. And that's exactly what they decided to do, except they were going to bring a satellite uplink dish to Iowa. Never been done before. Front cover of Time Newsweek, they proclaimed. But they had technical problems. They put us on. We're in front of 20 million people. But my lesson isn't that I was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The lesson is they talked about doing an uplink. Well, I was working with cable television at the time, and I thought, why couldn't I do this uplink? Because we were doing free previews of HBO to sell HBO. Now, if you remember, you got HBO for free one night. Like, hey, Marge, somebody's messing with our cable. And instead, it was us breaking in between saying, hey, you like this? Now's the time to call and get HBO. But I was going from town to town doing those free previews. I thought, satellite uplink, something that happened when I failed. Why couldn't I use that? And I called around, and yeah, they got me a satellite uplink. We sold $15 million worth of business in one weekend.
Wow. So Terry, just to kind of bring this into where you're going with this, is it all these failures where there's a key, like as you were going through this and you were like sending letters to the wrong place, and you were, you couldn't make the satellite work when you were on the Tonight Show, and all these different things, are all these failures the indication that, man, anything's possible? Is that kind of where we're going with this?
Well, I grew up on the farm. My dad I'd say, hey, let's do this. And he'd laugh at me. He wouldn't laugh at me. He'd say, well, why don't you try it? Letting me try things and realizing that failure is not that bad. So yeah, there were failures and all that, but people remember you by your successes, right?
Yeah.
And so by doing those satellite uplinks, I got all these stock options, everything went. And lo and behold, I was going to be in cable television all my life. It's the greatest job in the world, traveled all over the U.S., helping with all these different channels. Somebody came in and bought us out. And at 40, all of a sudden, I had to do my own thing. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I started my own companies. I took that same idea that it came from a failure and took that to other cable companies. And we started doing work for HBO, the Disney Channel. I did 150 live events from Disney World. And so for 10 years, I started, but then I also bought and sold a radio station, because when I found one of the big things in entrepreneurship is R&D. when you are making money, you'll continue to grow, and then all of a sudden it'll level off, and then all of a sudden you lose customers and you go down. You got to find something new. So I bought and sold a radio station. I started a show called Soccer Slam, full contact indoor soccer like WWE, and got that on Fox Sports World, all these different things. But then at 50, my next failure is midlife crisis. And that's where I decided I want to give back. I've made all the money I want. I've traveled all I want. So I got the call to run the zoo.
Well, hold on before we get there, because that's a great story. But before we talk about the details to it, I want to understand what was going through your mind. I mean, your stakeholders were probably saying, hey, let's get out of here. Let's run. Let's get away from this. It's losing $600,000. But what's going through your mind? Like what triggered that? Like, is it the midlife crisis or is it deeper than that?
I think it was a desire to give back. And when I got a call from an ex-governor, and how can you say no to a former governor? And I thought, well, what can you lose? They're going to close it anyway. The city was going to shut it down. So a nonprofit's taking over. So we took a look at it. And a lot of the techniques you learn, I tell people who want to be an entrepreneur right out of college, don't do it right out of college. Go to work for a company that you respect. So you can learn things like you're going to need insurance and you're going to need overhead and things that, if you're working for someone, you just get those for some magically deal. But when you have your own companies, you've got to do all of that. So going in, I used a lot of the experiences that I had in both cable and the others to know that I'm trying to get something crazy. I love marketing. I love promotion. How do we promote this thing? And so I had to find some way to get people through the door, because 2 to 12-year-olds were going to show up no matter what.
Right.
But how do we get millennials? So I asked the staff, how do you brainstorm? How do you get new ideas? You ask the staff, say, hey, any idea is a good idea. And they said, well, we get all the kids. How do we get millennials? And what are millennials like? Booze. That's right. Alcohol. Let's open the zoo at night and let's serve alcohol. Let's put in a band and let's let people have fun. Great date night. So all of a sudden we started getting all these millennials in, and we cash flowed it. It was so easy. And in fact, we said, what else could we do that we own? Because they said, well, it's going to cost $2 million for a new exhibit to get people in. I said, we can't afford $2 million. What do we have already that we could turn around a little bit? And they thought, and they said, well, we have poop and all the animals poop. Well, let's do a display called Scoop on Poop. So for a summer, we had Scoop on Poop where the little kids could come in and say, oh, there's the elephant poop. They'd go tell their friends. We'd get even more kids coming through the door. Then we said, well, you know what? Lions and tigers are predators. In Iowa, white-tailed deer are prey. They've never seen each other, but what if we sell their poop for $20 a gallon and people can put it on their plants and stuff, because the deer eat all their flowers and plants. We made $20,000 just on that little venture. So it's always looking for ideas, but working really hard to get your employees engaged in coming up with ideas, because remember, failure, they saw themselves that they were zoo keepers, right? And so they wanted money for the animals. They didn't want to be doing this zoo brew and all these other little things. But when we started making that money, they got half of it to enrich the animals that they love so much. And all of a sudden, our whole mental attitude was good, and all these people came in.
What was the biggest resistance you faced in the turnaround of the zoo? Like, what do you find? What was the biggest obstacle there?
I would say the zookeepers. We're a zoo. We don't do things except to show animals. And if the animals don't want to come out, they don't have to. So showing what was in it for them, and then you have to show what's in it for the customer that comes through the door. We took the fee from $4 to $9.95 because neighboring zoos were at $30. But the city, of course, wants to keep it as cheap as possible. So I said, let's go ahead and raise it to $9.95. But at the front door, if anybody comes in with kids and they said, I don't think we can afford this, let them in free. Because everybody coming from out of town used to paying much more than that. Everybody was happy. And all of a sudden we cash flowed it. The donors came out of the woodworks. We raised about $15 million in endowments. So the interest off that kept them going through COVID and will be there for years to come.
Interesting. Sometimes I find when there's financial pressure, businesses, or in this case, the zoo, they'll do like these Band-Aid fixes. Was that kind of a symptom of what was going on here too?
Well, you figure out what you can't do. We couldn't spend $2 million for it. And you figure out what can we do? What do we have that was free? That's where we get the poop idea. But What I found, and with my own companies back after the cable, when I went in and started my own companies, which was so fun. That's where I made the most money and had it. But the zoo was fun because it was give back to the community. What I found was when you make money, you don't immediately start something new and spend all that money, bet the bank, right? You try to make I always like to say, take 10%, even in small companies, and do R&D. Big companies all have R&D, research and development. So think about and start thinking, if you have your own company right now, think about taking 5-10% of the profit and just doing something really crazy, something fun that you'd always wanted to do, but you didn't want to bet the bank. That way, if you lose, it's like betting. When you go up and you bet at the blackjack table, if you lose, you take $100 and you call it entertainment. You lose it, you don't reach back in your pocket and pay for it. But you'll find that now you've got 2 or 3 things going. If something happens and the economy turns, and all of a sudden, if you're in a restaurant and it's going south, you're over here doing Uber driving or something else that continues so that you continue your success. Success is like cocaine. Once you've had it, you want to continue to taste it. And it is so fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let's wrap up this zoo one before I move on to the next thing. What's the end of the story here? It goes on to be a very successful zoo. How do you kind of extract yourself from that? At what point? And when did you know, like, hey, it's time for me to go on to different pastures?
Well, once we start talking about full fundraising, if I ask for money, because when you make money, people ask you for money for nonprofits, I was then asked for more money back. But I really was a marketing and salesperson. I knew that the zoo needed to expand now that we had the money coming in to get the new exhibits, to get more people in. So I thought, this is a perfect time to bring somebody in who has that kind of expertise. And again, back to being an entrepreneur, I learned very quickly. I didn't know much about legal. I didn't know much, really even accounting or overhead, all those things. So you want to surround yourself with people with things that you don't know. Good entrepreneurs are awful operators. So I had around me at the zoo all of these different people who knew how to do things. I knew how to promote and how to look the business wise and get the employees all engaged. So I thought, it's probably a good time to leave, but what's available? And then I got a call from the existing governor at that point and said, hey, you're doing a $3.5 million business there and you've really increased it, your cash flow in it. Our lottery director just resigned. Would you be interested in running the lottery, a $350 million enterprise?
Wow. Okay.
That sounds like fun. Why not? What do I have to lose?
Before we get there, and this is going to be a great story too, I do want to ask one thing. Was there anything beyond just cash? Were there any financial indicators or metrics that on the zoo that kind of stood out to you or you used as a gauge to know that you had problems?
I think the problem was at the beginning, full union staff, high pay. We needed to switch that around. We became non-union, but we put in a profit sharing. People, if they think they can make more money, often the bennies aren't as important as the money, especially with lower income groups. So we use that to kind of incent and then move that back in once we became profitable. But I think the big thing is keeping the reputation that when people come in, they expect something new, they want to see and have a new experience. And so we were always looking for the angle and the PR aspect of a new baby always brings more in. So we look for key elements that would get more people in and look for growth and let everybody continue to give suggestions and looking forward of how to keep that momentum growing.
Yeah. Switching from union to non-union sounds like a pretty controversial, potentially heated discussion. How did that play out? Was it not a big deal because it was the survival of this?
It was not a big deal.
Wow.
It was a big deal initially because people were worried about everything that the union would say. But for us, we're saying, do you want a job or they're going to close this place if we don't do something? So you're going to make actually more than you were before because we're going to do instead of the state taking out money out of your paycheck and forcing you to get into this, we're going to do profit sharing and we're going to do high level retirement income for you. So your actual paycheck will increase. And that's sold in very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. It's either survival or nothing, basically, is your choices. Yeah. That's an easy one. Okay.
And the zoo ultimately became the second largest attraction in the entire state of Iowa with all the things we did.
Wow. That is crazy. Okay. Now you get a call. Hey, do you want to be lottery director? Seems like a really interesting, different angle. Take us through that story. What's that look like? Just start out with, don't give me too much of the juicy stuff. I kind of want to set it up for me a little bit in terms of what that position looked like. What did you walk into?
So you walk into a government organization And I'm one, as you could tell, coming into the zoo, anything we touched, we wanted to do. And anytime I was in cable, everything we touched turned to gold. Now we had failures, but you always got recognized for your successes. So I walked into the deal and I said, hey, what if we put an animal on you think of things that you've done. Let's put an animal here. I was thinking, could we do a satellite uplink to sell tickets? Can we do this? Can we do that? About 2 weeks in, the management staff came in and they were fried. You could see it in their eyes. And I said, what's up? He said, we can't do this. Now, state employees, they said, no, we can't do this. And I said, what's the matter? He said, well, you're giving us all this and we just can't follow. And I realized if you're the king, you say, oh, poop, everybody heads for the bathroom. I said, oh, no. These are all ideas. I've got to come up with a method that allows you to that I can tell you an idea and you know that it's not one that I'm demanding and it's done. So we came up with this formula. Any email that was sent out, or if we talk face to face, but mainly emails, if I send you something, I'm going to put one of three things on. We came up with this acronym called COT, and it meant consider or throw away. Now, we have to set up rules when you do this in an organization. You say, okay, if you get something with COT on it, if you're in the middle of a conversion, if you're an IT person, just throw the email away. You don't even have to read it. I just want to get it off my chest. So consider or throw away means I want to tell you, but if you want to read it, that's fine. The second one is for your information. FYI. Well, yeah, read at some point. We may talk about it. But the final one, which I only used maybe 2% of all the emails I sent out, was action required. You better do this. This is the boss saying you should do it, right? And all of a sudden, the pressure came way down. And in fact, we turned that around so that the employees, the VPs, were sending me the same thing. They now didn't think, I'm not going to send them a dumb idea. I don't want to get fired. They would send me any ideas that they had with COT. They knew I would probably read it, but they knew they would not get a response at all. No response required. And it really, every idea is a good idea. The idea that you have a big bushel basket with 100 different grapes in it so they can find the grape that's going to give me the best flavor and the award-winning wine when I make it. I want 100 ideas, no judgment. Everybody gives a good idea. And then we put all those ideas together. And once a week, we'd take all those written ideas and we'd let everybody prioritize them. So at the beginning, no judgment. So that means that the lawyer can't say, hey, that's going to get you sued or that's going to cost you money. But now the second step is daring to act. They're able to prioritize it. And now the best ideas rise to the top so that the lawyers can then, when you back to judgment, when you get back together and they can say, okay, that's going to cost too much, that everybody gets input. Your top ideas, everybody will agree with. Now, all of a sudden, we have a concerted group that understand and we all have prioritized what we think will work. And you'll have a lot more success than just having one idea. Think about that. And when we talked about failure, if you think about that, when we sent 3 guys to the moon, project managers are notorious to say, okay, we're going to be done on this date. This is how much it's going to cost. Here's what's happening. Give updates. What's going on. If they'd have done that with the moon, they'd have failed because they'd have said 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And lo and behold, enjoy yourself. We've got it all planned out. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. They failed over 90% of the time. They had to continue to readjust. And that's the beauty of the new ideas when you come up with that, if you're a project manager and you have one idea, everybody's behind it, research and development, that's the way we go. And you fail, they'll say, I've tried that. It isn't going to work anymore. But if you put it together and you get all the ideas and then everybody gets together, you're always readjusting and doing because everybody's got a common vision of what's going forward.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
You're always readjusting and doing because everybody's got a common vision of what's going forward.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're thick in this lottery, getting ideas, figuring things out. You had mentioned when you first started this about an animal. Where did you go with this? Because I think you went in the direction of an animal in terms of promotion. Is that correct? Or where did you take it?
the lottery was making about $58 million. And basically what we did was the blocking and tackling of marketing and promotion. In the past, the governments would say, oh, you can't market, you can't spend any money. I said, hey, 50% of it's going to be wasted. 50% is going to work. But you got to spend the 100% to get 200%. So we took it from about a $58 million profit to almost $100 million when I left 10 years later. And it truly is hiring the right people, the right marketing person. And I went in and said, hey, you're now in charge. If you need new ideas, let me know. Here's your budget. And I'm not coming to any of your meetings unless you want me to, one, or second, you're behind budget. But here's our budget. We got to grow. And here we go. I never went to a marketing meeting after that. You know, I love marketing and sales, but you hire the right people. We had the right person who knew how to design tickets, who went out and researched to get people. You know, the beauty of gambling is you could say, okay, the cell phone, who wants to bet that I can hold it up here for 3 seconds? I'd sell $100,000. I mean, people want to gamble and people want to do it. I like doing it with the state because you know who's running it. So if something crazy happens, you know who to talk to. If you are betting it from Malta on blackjack or whatever, you have no idea who's running it and how fair and honest it is.
Yeah, Terry. So I think there's a gold nugget there. You said hiring the right people. What is that? Like, how do you pick? How do you know how to hire the right people? What have you learned in your illustrious career in terms of hiring the right people?
Well, you ask around, ask people to do it, and then you look for people who have a little bit of an open mind. I call them no-mans. No, man, we tried that before, it didn't work. I want you to tell me how to make it work. And so hiring the right people, I always look for that. The second is I try to stay out of the hiring process. You look for people, again, you hire the right person in HR and legal to bring you candidates that you believe are right. And then you, as a group, as a management group, we'd get together because everybody was so diverse in what they could do and what their expertise was. I wanted everybody's opinion. So we were all ready to back this person when they walked in the door, rather than they think I just hired my nephew to come in because he needed a job.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so back to this lottery evolvement. So you're building the profit in it. You've got a marketing person now. How does it get into you discovered fraud? And it's weird because as you're talking about being a marketing guy and really pushing growth, I wouldn't correlate that as someone catching fraud. How does that play out?
Well, it's back to the team. We created a culture to say, if you see something, say something. And you want to be having things fair and honest. That goes all the way, not only to me, but my boss, which was the governor, who, basically, I love marketing. And I get a call one day to say, hey, something's screwy. We haven't had a winner. We had this big jackpot of $16 million. No one came in for months after months after months. We had people trying to claim it falsely a little bit, and away it goes. And all of a sudden I get a call and said, hey, we've got a lawyer who has the right numbers. They called in and said, basically, hey, I've got the $16 million ticket. I'm going to send it to you. You send me the money. I live in Canada. Ding, ding, ding. Didn't feel right. That frontline employee contacts security in our marketing group and says, hey, this doesn't feel right. They called him back and said, yeah, I bought it. They said, well, what were you wearing? And we had video and audio of the recording. And lo and behold, we knew the guy was lying. So the security guy says, we were able to, arrest this guy possibly if he comes in because he just lied to us because we know that isn't him. Well, she said, our person said something to him to the effect of, hey, I don't think that was you. You didn't look like you on the tape. You kind of could hear him go, oh my gosh. So he said, yeah, I told a little fib. It's a client, but they don't want to be recognized. Ding, ding, ding. They don't want to be known. Ding, ding, ding. So they came in, we negotiated back and forth, and they gave up the money. Ding, ding, ding. Nobody gives up 15 million, 16 million bucks. Yeah. Long story short, we did an investigation. So now you bring in the team of the Department of Criminal Investigation, the Attorney General, all of our legal staff, all of our security staff. And it took almost 4 years. And lo and behold, we figured out it was an employee of a vendor organization of the lottery who was the person who wrote the code for a computer to do the drawing for this particular game. And he put in a code that allowed him, very sophisticated, 1 day a year to predict the numbers from what should be 10 million to 1 down to 200 to 1. So he would print all those up and he would give those to his brother or his friend and they were out, picking up these tickets. So, it was a total organization and state deal backed by the governor, who said, I don't care what you do. I want the game fair and honest. Spend all the money you want to figure this out. If I'd have been in a neighboring state, a state that didn't have good financial reserves and that sort of thing, I guarantee you that it said just pay it. In fact, some of the other employees or lotteries called me and said, just pay it. You're going to hurt you're gambling with $80 billion in money. That's how much money is spent a year on lotteries in those days. And so it was a tough decision, the ethics of it. Here's what I learned, though. It's pretty simple. If you have a business, there are three things the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners say will cause internal fraud. Number one, financial need. Now, you and I'd like to have more money any given day, but where it really happens is if, let's say you're drinking, you've spent all your money on your credit card, your kids are trying to go to college, you have a need. I need it now. The second is opportunity. This guy wrote the code, combined the code, oversaw the computer that drove it. So there wasn't a check and balance. Now, you see this in schools or small organizations where the business manager writes the checks, writes the purchase orders, those sort of things, real ripe for fraud. Those are two. But the third one is rationale. At what point over your shoulder does that little devil say, hey, you deserve this? Joe over here is making more money. You deserve this. You're not making enough. Those three combined makes you ripe for fraud. So you always want to have the checks and balances in everything you do.
Yeah. And I think, at least my experience in catching fraud is greed. Like nobody can quit after one time if it works, right?
Bingo.
And so they go back and they go back and they go back. So it's almost like the death kiss. Like, I don't know, maybe people do quit after one and we never catch them and that's why we don't know. But it seems like everybody has to go back and get more and it keeps raising the stakes.
Well, you nailed it right on the head because the guy that did it had his brother claim the first one. It was a small one, got by with it, then had his friend claim another one in Wisconsin. So all of a sudden, this became a national event. It's had 2 or 3, and there's a documentary coming out, or a documentary in June that will be on this entire matter called the Jackpot, the largest lottery scam in U.S. history.
Well, I'll have to check that out. You started this discussion about the fraud. Your first opening was because we had a good culture. It allowed people to bring things up. Is that something you consciously worked on in terms of creating a good culture? It sounded like the email, the way you tagged emails, you were trying to be respectful of people's times. So what other thing, if it is something you were conscious about, what other things did you do?
That's a good point. I think if I look back, it started in the cable television. We were a young entrepreneurial company.
Okay.
We were making money, but I had no idea. But they sent out financials every month on how we are and what our goal was and what it is. I saw every line item. So I did that when in all of my own companies. I did it at the zoo, which helped them. That really told the story to them. If we don't change this thing, it's going to close. But I started doing that in the lottery. And I would have, full staff meetings once a month just to answer questions, let them send in their notes on the whole consider or throw away. We'd show them all these different ideas everybody had. So people would know that I'm not going to get fired if I send a dumb idea, because most people think, I don't want the boss. I don't want to be embarrassed. It's a dumb idea. You don't put your name on it, just give it to us and it may be something that might work. So you tie that to the lottery that I think in general that you feel okay, that it's okay to speak up. It's okay to do it. Really, really paid off.
Yeah, that's a big one. And Terry, the other thing you brought up that I thought was interesting, you had a choice. Like you could have just ignored this, pay the $16 million and move on. You had pressure, it sounded like, from other areas that are saying, other lotteries are saying, hey, don't risk our meal ticket here. Like we're making a lot of money. What pushed you, or where did you get the nah, I'm going to get down to this and figure it out? Like what was the reasoning behind that, or what were your thoughts?
The rewards are few. I have high regards now for the internal audit group, the financial group, legal group. It would have been a lot easier to pay. And you can see why national politicians or any politician, how they get in this rut or they get pushed in the corner of why, I get by with it. I can do this, or, I don't have to adhere to the $3. But I think that it's back to the culture. And the other thing is knowing that something happened. I like to sleep at night. I don't want to go to bed thinking what should I have done? When it's all done, I didn't want to send somebody to prison for up to 25 years. And I didn't want to lose friends over it. And I definitely lost positions that I might have had on national organizations by doing it because they thought I might, that I'm a promoter. I was on TV all the time. but I like to sleep at night too. So when it was all said and done, very few people get what we got. And that is someone that the investigation was so good that they pled guilty. They said, yes, that's what we had. And they went to prison. Usually if it's a rape, murder, assault, it's appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. And you go to bed every night thinking, geez, this might turn around or might get tossed out on a weird technicality. And now all my friends are going to really say, you really messed up because you ruined our reputation. The opposite happened where we were making $80 million or the $80 billion gamble. Actually, sales increased because every time we got on, people thought, well, geez, they're checking this thing all the time. This must be safe. And so it's up to about $110 billion now is what the national lottery sales are.
Oh, crazy. Okay. This is a few questions I got, kind of a lightning round type thing. So the first one I want to start with is, after all your experiences, what do you believe is the most undervalued skill or trait in business leadership today?
Probably honesty and the excitement of taking a risk.
Really? So you think people are potentially a little too conservative when it comes to risk?
But risk, understanding what the downside is. I mean, it's the calculated risk. Calculated risk is probably tied with honesty.
Okay, great. And man, you've got an interesting career. I mean, you've 4 successful businesses, I think, if I have the count right. You've done a zoo turnaround. You've built a lottery, plus caught some major fraud. What's one thing you would do differently at the beginning of your career?
Learn how to relax. Took me till I was in my 60s when I worked with Damon John from Shark Tank. We were doing a TV. I was standing by him and he was writing down something. And I said, man, what are you doing? He says, I've got a list of 5 before I go to bed and I revise them by morning when I wake up. I said, you have that many $1 million ideas? He said, no. He said, these are ideas for me that reward me. I can do something for myself. Most people think that sounds selfish, but he said, when I do them in the morning, like making your bed, make your bed, you've accomplished something and you did it. He said, I do something in the morning. I have oatmeal because I haven't had it for a long time. It puts me in the right frame of mind to make other people successful when I take out. And I thought a lot about that because it's tough for me to settle down. Even with things that you're saying, I'm thinking, what if we did it this way? Or I wonder how we could improve it that way. I wish that I had learned how to relax more.
Yeah, I've only known you for a short time, but I can tell you're a driven guy. Your mind's moving fast. So I think even your level of relaxation is probably different than probably a lot of people, is what I'm seeing in your personality. It's funny how we're wired. I talked to another guy recently that was towards the end of his career, and his just really driven hard. I mean, he's trying to slow himself down, but it's like, hey, I see myself doing this until I'm 80 or whatever, whatever age. I don't remember what age he was.
It's like cocaine. I'm telling you, success is like cocaine. I drive to the grocery store. I made it in 3 minutes and 48 seconds. I wonder if I can do it in 3 minutes and 47 next time.
So you're really competitive. Is that fair to say?
I don't think so. I like to see everyone win, but when I do win, I really like to appreciate, happiness happens on the way to success. It's more fun to get to that success than it is to make it. And then what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. Okay. Here's the last one. I'd love to end with a couple tips, entrepreneurial tips, if you have them. I know you've given us a lot already, and you can reuse something if you think you really want to drive it home, but just something that we could apply. And we've got a lot of business owners out in the audience, just something that we could apply, maybe make us better. And whether it be personal or entrepreneurial, either is fine.
I think don't rely on just one thing. I've had 2 jobs in everything I've done, figuring that if I got fired from one, which I've never been fired from one, I always made the decision to take the next. But if you get fired from one, I've got something back up. So I was a radio DJ when I worked for cable television. I had at least 4 companies going when I was in my own business. When I was at the zoo, I did some more radio on as a talk show host. And even as a lottery, I started doing these professional speaking all around the world. And so I think maybe that's it keeps me secure and knowing what to do. And I think as an entrepreneur also always knowing that you need more cash than you think you do when you start a company. You want to have at least 6 months of cash flow before you step out on your own. That's why you work for somebody else, make your money, put it aside, and then do it. I think those are 2 ideas.
Yeah, that's a great one. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me that weren't adequately capitalized in their new venture. And sometimes even 6 months is enough. I would even argue sometimes a year or two. And they come to you and they just went through their 401k. They blew through all that to keep the doors open.
Wow.
Now they've got $500,000 of debt, a business that's not making them money, and they have no money left. It's sad. So that can't stress. Both are great points, but that being adequately capitalized is a huge one.
You ready for the $1 million idea yet?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's bring it. We're right at the end here before I announce your website.
All right. Here's $1 million idea. When we were doing Powerball and Mega Millions, combined them, they asked me to do some promotional thoughts on how do we do Mega Millions. And so I driving home, again, you got ideas. You always want to have a pencil by your bed so you can write down your ideas and keep them stacked so you can look at them every once in a while. I looked up and saw the moon, and it was a crescent moon, the little white here and then dark on this side. Oh my God, let's get a laser or a big spotlight and let's put the jackpot on the dark side of the moon so people can see it at night and what it is. No one's ever owned the moon. So it would be, you'd own the billboard, the biggest billboard in the world. So I called all over and everybody told me, you can't get through the atmosphere with a laser. And so they said, you need to get it up above the atmosphere. And then I thought, Elon Musk, if I can get on one of his satellites, we might be able to own the moon. So if you want to get in on that deal, you let me know.
So just to understand this fully, the jackpot would be sitting on the real moon in the sky. That's the vision? Yeah.
And you could, and when it's a crescent moon, it's a little like a thumbnail and it's dark there.
Right.
Why couldn't we get so that you could see it back here? And but really it worked for anybody. You could put a car dealership up there. You could play a movie tonight. I don't know.
The biggest billboard in the world, right? Yeah, I love it. Okay. Hey, your website, that's a good one. Your website is terryspeaks.com.
That easy?
Yeah, it's really easy. terryspeaks.com. If people wanted to reach out to you, is that the best spot or is there anywhere else you'd like them to go?
Everything is on that. I have 2 books, one on innovation, one on the big lottery fraud, and pictures, smiles, and lots of fun. But most of all, I love out speaking to groups. I do a lot of keynotes.
Who's your ideal target audience for your speaking engagements, just in case there's someone out there listening?
I do a lot. I did judges, receiverships in DC to a lot of banks, of course, lotteries. Anybody small business is big, insurance companies. But I've been to all over Europe and US. And think about that. They pay you to go give a speech. They pay for your transportation. Awesome. I take 2 or 3 days and look around and learn about all the places in the world. And then I come home and enjoy the family.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
I take 2 or 3 days and look around and learn about all the places in the world. And then I come home and enjoy the family.
Do you ever have people in the audience, small business owners in particular, come up to you in between your speech or after and kind of share with you a horror story that they've had related to fraud?
There's quite a few. And they share the same thing of, I was afraid. It's a lot easier. Even if it's kind of like a lot of times you'll hear about somebody firing a bad employee and they worry about they're going to get sued. So they pay him off rather than that. But where does that bad employee go if you don't stop it? They go to another company and they do it again. Like 60% of most fraud is never reported. And that's why the other 40% is going to go to someone else and do it again. So those are the kind of stories that I hear. But most of all, they kind of smile and they love to hear the story on the Johnny Carson show to the lottery fraud and everything in between.
You got a lot of good ones. Okay, Terry, you're awesome. I appreciate you being on the show.
Too.
Thanks so much for your time. I can't thank you enough.
You bet. Thanks for asking me.
Wow, that was a fun ride. Terry Rich has lived one of the most unique business careers, from running promotions with Johnny Carson to exposing the biggest lottery scam in U.S. history. But here's my take, and what I think every business owner should sit with after this episode. Culture protects your business, not policies, not procedures, culture. It wasn't fancy systems that uncovered the fraud. It was a team member who felt empowered to speak up. Terry didn't build great results because he micromanaged. He built trust, created space for ideas, and made it safe to fail, adjust, and try again. That's leadership. If you want long-term success in your business, focus on hiring well, building trust, and encouraging real feedback. Because when your team cares and it feels safe, you'll spot problems faster and build something far more resilient. Hey, thanks again for listening. If this episode sparked an idea or helped you think differently about your business, do me a quick favor, leave a review or share it with someone else who'd appreciate it. And hey, if your business is growing, but your financials feel messy or unclear, I'd love to help. You could book a call with me through the link in the show notes. I'll catch you next time on Think Business with Tyler.
Electricast.